So we left off talking about how Montag is a dynamic character, which means he undergoes a change. So what causes Montag to change? The answer is, first, Clarice. And again, Bradbury's really thoughtful with names. Clarice, the root of this name is Claire. It's a Latin word, Claire, which means and has given us words like clear and clarity. So Clarice, as her name implies, sees and understands things clearly. She questions and wonders. When she first meets Montag, she wants to know all about him, all about his interests, his feelings, his moods. She's constantly seeking clarity, knowledge, and enlightenment. Enlightenment is this idea of truth, supreme truth, of this aha moment of knowing something truly and completely. And when he meets her, she really gets Montag to start thinking and questioning right off the bat. She asks him, "Are you happy?" And within a matter of hours, not even, he comes to the realization he isn't happy, that he wears his happiness like a mask. And this power that she has, this ability to make things clear, to guide people, is furthered with the imagery associated with her. So remember, Bradbury associates specific imagery like whiteness, moonlight, candles, mirrors, clocks, these really great images and symbols that he uses with her that all emphasize how she is guiding Montag, specifically to greater truth and understanding. So white is symbolic of purity and innocence. The moon is a symbol of guidance. Candles symbolize a light in the dark, guidance and hope. Mirrors symbolize truth, and clocks symbolize awakening. And all of these things help us to understand that she is a force guiding Montag to help him understand himself and his society, to see things for what they really are. And after he meets her, he starts to question his job, and he starts to question the firemen. And this is where he's reminded of their history with Ben Franklin establishing the first firemen to burn English-influenced books. However, we know this is a false reality. So let's take a look at these two passages with Clarice on page 21 and then 31 that really show the role she has in his dynamic journey and how this gets him to think differently about fire, gets him to see fire and its destructive side. So let's start here. Page 21. She asks him about halfway down the page, "How did it start? How did you get into it?" So again, notice how often Clarice is asking questions. How did you pick your work? And how did you happen to think to take the job you have? You're not like the others. I've seen a few I know. When I talk, you look at me. When I said something about the moon, you looked at the moon last night. The others would never do that. The others would walk off and leave me talking or threaten me. No one has time anymore for anyone else. You're one of the few who put up with me. That's why I think it's so strange you're a fireman. It just doesn't seem right for you somehow. He felt his body divide itself into a hotness and a coldness, a softness and a hardness, a trembling and a not trembling, the two halves grinding one upon the other. So she starts to question him, asking him, "How did you get into this job? And why did you choose it?" Because she points out that he doesn't seem to fit this job. And as she's doing this, we've got this really interesting, great passage here. He felt his body divide. So there's a part of Montag who is the fireman, but clearly there's a part of him that is becoming something else. And this becomes very clear when he speaks to the fire captain on page 31. Montag looked at the cards in his hand. I've been thinking about the fire last week, about the man whose library we fixed. What happened to him? So again, Montag is starting to question here the destructive nature of fire, what they're doing. He's starting to question his job. He starts to ask what happened to this guy and what would happen if one of them had books. And then further down the page, Montag hesitated. Was it always like this? The firehouse, our work. I mean, well, once upon a time. Once upon a time? What kind of talk is that? Fool, thought Montag to himself. You'll give it away. At the last fire, a book of fairy tales, he glanced at a single line. I mean, in the old days, before homes were completely fireproofed. Suddenly it seemed a much younger voice speaking for him. He opened his mouth, and it was Clarice McClellan saying, Didn't firemen prevent fires rather than stoke them up and get them going? So it's as if Clarice is speaking here, showing her influence. She is influencing him to change. That's rich. Stoneman and Black drew forth their rule books, which also contained brief histories of the firemen of America, and laid them out where Montag, though long familiar with them, might read. So we see here that not all books are illegal. That there are certain books the government allows, but they're very tightly controlled, obviously. So two of the firemen, take out their rule book. These are the types of books that are allowed, books that are clear-cut, that tell people not why to think, but what to think. And in there, we find out, established 1790 to burn English-influenced books in the colonies. First fireman, Ben Franklin. So as I said before, this is a false reality that they've created. A false reality is something that you believe to be true, but you discover is in fact not true. So they believe that Ben Franklin was the first fireman, which is in part true, but they believe he was the first fireman who started burning books, which is the false part. So Ben Franklin, in fact, did establish in America the first public firefighting force. However, he did it not to start fires, but to put them out. And to say Ben Franklin is someone who would burn books is ludicrous. He is, in fact, someone who loved and cherished reading, one of our founding fathers who created one of the first public libraries. But they've taken this truth and they've twisted it to fit their purposes.